Hey class, Professor Ivy here. I just wanted to explain a few things about the upcoming assignment, the annotated bibliography. What we're looking at right now is the assignment sheet for it. And basically what you're going to be doing is this is your research for what's going to be your final exam essay, which is going to be an argument essay. And what you're going to be arguing is for any kind of change in our food system, whether that be our culture and how we look at food and how we eat as a family, or whether you're talking about a change in the industry around corporate meat production, or if you're arguing for regulatory laws or whatever you're arguing for, that's going to be the subject matter. And the book, the Michael Pollan book in Defense of Food, and the Food Inc. video, those are two of your possible sources already. So for the annotated bibliography, you're going to be finding 8 sources total. So one can be Food Inc., one can be Michael Pollan, okay? So what you're looking at here is the assignment sheet. You can see that this thing is going to be due by April 18th, all right? Here is your topic, overall topic, one of the things you can choose from. Here are some very specific examples of that. You can argue, for a specific kind of dietary change in an individual, back with research. You can argue for changes in the way we treat, our cattle, our chickens, You can argue to ban glyphosate, which is Roundup in Georgia. You can argue all kinds of things. You can even argue for new laws, okay? But anyways, I've got an example of this annotated bibliography at the bottom of the page, but basically, as we discussed, before everything went crazy, it is a works-cited page that has a very small introduction at the beginning of it, which is essentially a list of questions. And it is then a works-cited entry, followed by a summary of that article, which has to have certain things in it. And then your next works cited entry, and then a summary of that article. And then your next works cited entry, and then a summary of that source, or whatever it is. By article, I mean, it could be, an online article from, like a scholarly journal. It could be like an article from National Geographic. It could be a chapter from the Michael Pollan book. These are sources, okay? So, this should be in third person MLA format as usual, okay? And this is the first thing that you're going to do is write an introduction, all right? You should have one introduction for the entire assignment. And you can see here below, like after you put your name at the top of the page and the title, this is an example of your introduction, all right? And this is what it should have. And it definitely should not have one for each entry. This is an introduction for the entire assignment, okay? And what it's going to state is your research questions. These are questions that you're trying to answer to form your argument. Basically, this is support that you're trying to find for your argument, okay? So that's going to be, that's going to be one aspect of your introduction, okay? And you're also going to tell the reader what the scope of your research is. That means how big it's going to be. Basically this thing's going to be a list of questions that you're trying to find, right? And then exactly what you're trying to cover. So like if I was using climate change as an example, a narrow scope, which is what you're going to be doing for this assignment, only 8 sources, would focus on one specific aspect of climate change, like for instance, how fossil fuels, car exhaust, burning coal, affects affects climate change. A broad thing, like if you're going to do a huge one of these with like 20 sources, it would be like on every aspect of climate change. But for this assignment, only 8 sources. So whatever that you're arguing for in this assignment needs to be very specific, okay? One thing, the citations for each of your 8 articles needs to be in MLA format, which we've already covered. If not, you can Google MLA format in Purdue. Al will come up and it will tell you everything you need to know. If you use Galileo to find your sources, it'll do MLA format for you. If you don't use Galileo and you go to some online sources, it's your responsibility to check for that credibility of that source, like we did in the journal assignment. And if it's not a credible source, and I'm going to be checking each one, you will lose points. Okay. So it just can't be any crap off the internet. Okay. It's got to be, you got to verify this is a good source. All right. So writing each citation and summary. So after you write this little 3 to 5 sentence introduction, and here's my example. This research seeks to answer the following questions, right? What effect do carbon emissions have on the ocean, and how will carbon emissions affect humans in the next 3 decades? Is it possible to solve this issue, and through what means? All right. The purpose of this research is to establish whether or not carbon emissions affect climate change as it relates to the ocean. See, I'm being very specific about climate change, carbon emissions, and the ocean. And you need to be specific about your topic too, right? Okay. So if so, how do the, if so, we want to determine how it affects, these effects will pertain to humans, what it will do to them. And then I noted at the end, this research may also contain possible responses to reduce damage if research merits response. In other words, if along the way we find out that there is some answers to these problems, things we can do, then that needs to be in the research as well. All right. Now, back up to the top. All right. So you put in, after your introduction, your first works cited entry. Then you put in your summary, which I have color-coded for you here. This is what needs to be in the summary. The first sentence needs to be a summary of the whole article and its purpose, what the article is trying to achieve, what it's trying to teach us, right? Just in one sentence. Then the next 3 or 4 sentences are going to be the main points of that article. Now, you do not want to copy and paste because, that's plagiarism. But these summaries are going to have a high similarity rate because there's only so many ways that you can say, the data was collected from 32 experiments and 64 large marine ecosystems, and 90% of this, edible life is gone. There's only so many ways that you can summarize these main points when you have, specifics. But what you need to remember is, don't just do a copy and paste job. You need to be picking out the most important points of that article and writing them. Now, you're going to have similarity with percentages and certain words that can't be said any other way, but don't just copy and paste. That's my point. All right. The next part of your summary needs to be information about the authors, just like we did in the journal. When you looked at one of Michael Pollan's sources for their credibility, you're doing the exact same thing here. Now, you may find that a source may be biased, may have been, funded by somebody shady, like an oil company or something like that, and that may have make this thing not trustworthy. The chances of that happening are going to be pretty slim, but look for it and include it if it's there. The last part that you do of your summary is a discussion of how this source adds to your overall research goal and how it relates to other research in the annotated bibliography. So what is it trying to do for you, basically, for your argument essay? How is it proving one of your points? And is it confirming what some of your other sources said, or is it adding a new aspect to your argument? That's what I'm trying to say here. All right, so after you've written that paragraph summary, and here's my example, which you can read, all right, then you move on, to your next one, your next works cited entry and your next summary, and you do that 8 times. Okay, email me or if you have any questions. Thank you.